You're listening to Worksights, insights about the American workplace, workplace law, and the future of work. This podcast is produced by the Noble Law, an employment law firm with offices across the United States, and is hosted by managing partner Laura Noble, a recognized leader in employment law with over 20 years of diverse legal experience. This podcast is not intended to be used as legal advice and does not establish an attorney-client relationship with its listeners.
I am so excited for our podcast guest today. Karen Tax is an executive coach and my executive coach and business culture consultant who is also the author of The Passion, Authenticity, and Leadership at Workbook, which I highly recommend. Thank you for chatting with me today, Karen.
You are so welcome. I'm excited to talk about leadership with you.
So I have so many things that I want to dig into, but I wanted to give some context about why I wanted to even have this conversation with you. For a very long time, I resisted the idea that I was a leader in a firm or in a company. My journey as an owner of a law firm was not a straight path. So I started off in law school as an assistant district attorney in New York, and then I worked for a civil litigation firm, and then I worked for a nonprofit. So I had these varying experiences. And then I left the workforce to raise children, and I was out of the labor market for 7 years. When I decided to go back to work as a lawyer, I had to sit for the North Carolina bar because I couldn't waive in because I hadn't practiced for so long. And I thought that I would just take the bar and go and find myself a nice job, being sort of somebody number two in the company or just writing briefs or, sort of a you tell me what to do and I'll do it kind of person. And I went out very eagerly into the job market and realized pretty quickly that I was unemployable. By the then standards of 2008, I was basically functionally illiterate in technology. I'd been out of it for so long. I did not have a neat storyline that told people like who I was. You know, I'm an IP lawyer. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I had done all these different jobs. And I had been a stay-at-home mom. That was not a terribly valued experience as I was meeting with firms. So I decided that since no one was going to hire me to do what they wanted me to do, I might as well figure out what I wanted to do and then go from there. And so I very intentionally chose employment law because it spoke to me as the kind of law that I wanted to be doing for people. I went into law, like most lawyers, to help people. And it really spoke to me that people at work, we all work, are mistreated and don't have good opportunities or are fired wrongfully or even worse, sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. And I wanted to be part of the firm that helped people when they found themselves in that situation. And then from there, I needed to find another experienced attorney to help me. I had no idea how to do it. And I just kept visualizing this person that I needed who came from a big firm, who had great experience, who would come and work for me for almost no money. And out of Craigslist, I found this person who is now my current partner. And things were going well. I was working with bar associations and committees and really just trying to give as much as I possibly could in terms of my experience. And then as we continued to grow, I decided that I didn't know enough in the world of how to run a law firm and didn't trust myself enough that I was making my own right decisions. That's when you and I first started talking about leadership.
Leadership, right.
A word that scared the shit out of me because I didn't think of myself as a leader. I didn't know what that meant. And so I'm just digging deep into how does it look when, a mother of three is running a law firm who was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years and forging my own way into it. So my first question to you is, what is leadership?
Yeah. Maybe you're not going to like this, but I'm going to throw the question right back at you. Because what I'd like to know from you, Laura, is what scared you or what were you uncomfortable with about the word leadership?
At the time, I think it was that I thought that that meant you had to have a level of success and expertise that meant you had all the answers. You didn't make mistakes. You were the one that made all the decisions, and all of that flowed downhill. And then all the soldiers just, went out with their marching orders.
And that's often what people think of leaders being, is some sort of perfect image of a person. So a classic definition of leadership is someone who creates an organization of some sort and has followers. Often it's a parental figure, someone who's there to take care of you. You could think of a priest or a father or think of your favorite, whomever, who people go to feel safe and taken care of. Right. And they've built the engine of whatever it is, the institution, the religion, the business, whatever, so that people can slide in, not have to think too much, and just do the work and, go home at the end of the day and not have to worry. That's like an old school definition of leadership. And here's the thing, true leadership is what you showed in how you launched this business, saying, I'm not going to let this situation in the marketplace define who I am, what I'm capable of. I'm going to do what I want to do. What do I like? What do I want to do? What do I want to build on? That's what a true leader does, and then brings on other people to join you in that endeavor.
So I'm going to ask you, Karen.
Yes.
When do you find yourself being called in to work with companies? What issues do you see typically that they're facing that makes them reach out to you as a coach?
Yeah, so the issues that I typically respond to are people being reactive, and there's conflict, there's lack of clear communication, there's people struggling to get past dysfunctional dynamics within an organization. And the way you do that is by being clear about who you are and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Most coaches and consultants start with the what. What are we going to do? What is it that the profit targets and whatever else, right? It's usually money. But if it's only money, we're not tapping into the bigger potential of the people in our organization. So if we bring it back to who are we, what are we taking a stand for? You're going to access a whole lot more of the people in your organization. And we're going to humanize it. We're going to say, okay, who are you at your best individually and collectively? And what are the challenges that we're facing individually and collectively? And then you take that energy that starts getting unleashed and you guide it on a trajectory that's like, here's what we're here to do, a purpose that's greater than one individual, that allows people to come together, overcome obstacles, and serve a niche need in the marketplace that's profitable. You're tapping into the brilliance of every individual, where the energy comes from their motivation and they're connecting into the purpose of the organization, where they will go the extra mile, but it will be nourishing for them. There will be sustainable energy in that process. So there's health reasons and well-being reasons to do this. There's also diversity reasons, because in the old model of leadership, you have one perspective and one dominant perspective only. And we have to learn how to invite multiple perspectives and have that align with a trajectory for an organization that fuels what we're creatively doing to fulfill those objectives and goals, rather than having it be compressed.
Right. And, one of the things that I enjoy most is when I see folks moving within their particular job and excelling within their job and telling me how much they enjoy their job. Yeah. And the thing that breaks my heart is when I see someone miserable at work.
Right.
And I think I don't want to run a company where someone hates coming to their job that's a failure on my part. That is a complete failure. So tell me what it is that you hate, and let's fix that. Now,
Yeah.
Not everything is going to be fun. My job isn't fun every single minute of every day, but there's enough there that I like, that I get to be creative and directive of my own self, that I'm going to continue showing up and doing it in an enthusiastic way. And I want everyone to feel that way. And particularly in the law, there is a long history of who can be the most miserable. Who can win the most miserable son of a bitch game? I was in my desk until 2 a.m. I slept 4 hours. I'm in my same suit from yesterday because I slept under my desk. And I thought, I don't want to do that. That's not the way I want to live.
No. And part of what we're doing is we're saying that no longer is laudable. And it's up to us to change the game. Part of my motivation to get into leadership was feeling like the leaders that I saw would say one thing and do another. There was such a blatant lack of integrity going on, and I just hated it. And I thought, I don't want to be that kind of leader.
Right.
And then what I discovered was how hard it actually is to have integrity in an organization. Like it's really hard because you have to be tapped into yourself enough to be able to have courage to say things that are difficult for other people to hear. And everybody gets susceptible to that. Ooh, I want people to like me or whatever, right? Whatever the issue is. And I feel like part of the motivation that we're talking about here is that we are working to create healthier workplaces with employment law.
Absolutely.
We don't want to be one of those kind of organizations.
Absolutely. Part of the critical mission is that I'm not only concerned with the client journey and delivering the best outcomes I can for our clients. As an employment lawyer who represents employees, I want to create a workplace that is, values the employees and delivers legal services in a way that doesn't crush legal service providers, right? I want us to not only do a better job delivering legal services to clients, I want us to do a better job to lawyers and paralegals and legal assistants and everyone else who get burned out and miserable in the law. There's nothing inherent in law that makes it a miserable fucking place to work. There's nothing inherent in it. We've created that system. So let's deconstruct that and create a new one. Right. And you can deliver legal services in a way that doesn't crush your soul.
Absolutely.
That's a really important part of my vision. And so listening to people and distributing power also helps with that issue that you were talking about, Karen, because you have to have the system set up in place before the conflict and drama happens.
And I want to highlight a challenge that we had to get through in doing exactly what you just described, Laura, which was you saying to me, it doesn't feel like I'm doing real work if I do these things, right? Like, well, I'm not actually adding value by spending time doing this stuff. And what I really want to acknowledge to people is this is real work. And it's real work that doesn't happen in most organizations. So the real work I'm talking about is things like performance reviews, making sure that those happen, like the basic things that make sure the goals and expectations are clear and conversations are had with employees so they know where they're at, they know what's expected, and you can course correct as you go. It's like these fundamental things that are so important.
It's so true, Karen. I absolutely, when we first started, I said, I'm a lawyer. I should be writing briefs. I should be arguing with defense counsel. I should be going to court. This isn't real work, writing down what my vision is. What the hell is that? And it turned out to be so much harder. It's really hard.
It's hard. And you and I have had conversations where we've slogged through writing a job description or doing a PIP or whatever it is. And you're like, God, I hate doing this work. And I'm like, right. And it's so important. It's so important to communicate to an employee what the deal is. And it shows that you care about them as a person rather than treating them as a cog in the machine of production. Right? It's an expression of caring that matters.
So that's, I think, again, the discussion around power is so very important. When I first started talking about this and I had pushback from some people, you get a lot of oh, I'm not good at the soft skills and don't get me into that mushy, woo-woo stuff. And my response to that is we are in, the great resignation right now.
Yes.
People are not going to work anymore. And it's not just because their fear of COVID or their fear of vaccine mandates. It's because they don't want to be treated like crap in the workplace anymore.
Right.
They don't want to be treated like little soldiers that are going out and don't have a thought in their head. That model is not working anymore. And I will say in those traditional areas of leadership is also where you see an acquiescence to toxic company culture.
Right.
And I do believe that when you're in a culture that allows toxicity, ego, just general demeaning, bullying behavior, you're paving the way for a culture that's going to allow for discrimination, sexual harassment, even sexual assault.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I could just add two things to this, there's a power over dynamic that happens in traditional leadership where the person at the top or the people at the top have the power and the authority to make decisions, which allows them to exert control over people in the organization. And this dynamic is what creates systems of oppression. And it is not the kind of culture or way of behaving that allows empowerment, true empowerment to happen. People are more motivated by stress, by compliance, by a fear of conflict, which actually leads me to the second thing, which I feel like is just a huge issue from what I'm seeing from my clients and various organizations is a lot of the reason we end up in these power over dynamics is people don't have the skills to be able to resolve conflict, to have conversations that brings multiple perspectives along, that allows creativity to happen, because the way you do that as a leader is by being clear about what you want, clear about what you're taking a stand for, and having that intention be something that you're bringing to the organization, and then let go of some control about how that's going to happen. And most leaders don't know how to do that either. Right. So it's a progression of skill building that, and I'm being very careful to describe this as a skill. A skill is something that anybody can learn. And so from my perspective, the Great Resignation, what you're talking about, is an opportunity for everyone who is in a workplace to say, hey, we want this to be healthier. That's the message that we're getting. And we can do this. We can create healthier workplaces.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I would add one piece to the authentic and real and connected, which I was missing when I first started, which is vulnerability.
Yes.
So you can't have a real intimate connection with anyone in any context unless you're willing to be vulnerable.
Yes.
I think everyone who's studied interpersonal dynamics, any therapist you talk to, any psychiatrist is going to tell you that that's how you create intimacy. And
right.
Yet in most workplaces, we like to pretend that we're two different people, right? That we have this work person that shows up, and then we have this, real person who goes home at night. And yet in our businesses, we are asking people constantly to show up as their best self, do their best work, and be the most productive.
Right.
But we're asking them to do that in a context where they're being told, don't be your real self, be fake, don't be vulnerable, don't be intimate, don't share things with me. I don't want to know. And that's this. How is that possibly going to work? Now, I'm not saying that you should be asking people about their, marriage or their health conditions. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the context of work, say me working with one of the partners at my firm, who I respect enormously, who's incredibly smart, and we're working together on a legal strategy and deciding who's going to write what parts of the brief. If she asks me something and I don't know the answer, or I have no idea what she's talking about because she's gone completely over my head, 5 years ago, I think I would have faked my way through it because I would want her to
Yes.
think I was stupid. Now I'll look at her and say, okay, smarty pants, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Can you dumb this down for me until I can understand?
Yes.
And the beautiful thing about that is that now she'll do the same thing with me because no one lawyer knows everything.
Of course.
And it's created a better way for us to create better product.
Right. And this is something, Laura, I'm so glad you brought this up because we intentionally moved in this direction, right? We talked about vulnerability. We talked about how it is that you show up in a way that welcomes people to bring the best of what's going on and the challenges. Yeah. And I want to make sure that I want people who are listening to this to really understand you are welcoming opinions and people who are motivated and interested in leadership to do leadership. You've also worked on providing a context, clear direction, values. We think of it as or talk about it as a container. And This is a very traditional way of leading, although many organizations don't actually do it or do it well, is if you have a clear cohesive leadership team with basic questions answered, like who are we? Why do we exist? What do we do? What are our core competencies? What's our mission? What are our strategic directions? What are our top priorities? That is the job of a leadership team. When you have those questions answered and communicated to your organization, then you can welcome the kind of participation that you're talking about, Laura. So people know they have guardrails. They know the boundaries within which they can show up and be empowered. And you have decided what those boundaries are.
Karen, as always, it is an absolute pleasure to talk to you about leadership issues, particularly when I just get to talk and you're not actually moving me to do anything.
Right, exactly. We get to just explore. And so it's just a pleasure and so much fun to get to talk with you about this.
I really appreciate it. As always, I learned something from you. I'm enormously grateful for your guidance here, and I hope that you get lots of opportunities to share your wealth of knowledge with other people.
This has been Worksights. You can learn more about Laura Noble and the Noble Law on LinkedIn, Facebook, or thenoblelaw.com. Thank you for listening.